U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene resurfaced Facebook post caused the term Jewish space laser to trend on Twitter Thursday. Greene is well known for holding extremist, racist, and anti-democratic political views and for promoting a litany of insane conspiracy theories, including QAnon. But on Thursday, an old Facebook post revealed what might be her most inane and most racist conspiracy theory of all, that lasers controlled by Jewish people caused the deadly 2018 California wildfires. The recently sworn-in Congresswoman from Georgia really said that. Greene wrote that there are, quote, too many coincidences to ignore regarding the fires, and opined that they weren't a natural phenomenon at all. Instead, she theorized that, first, the Rothschilds, a wealthy Jewish family frequently mentioned by Nazis and other racist groups who advance horrific anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, two, teamed up with PG&E and the government of California to, three, deliberately cause the fires using, four, a laser from space, five, in order to clear out the land for a high-speed rail line. Many people had extremely funny things to say about this madness. I myself wrote Rabbi Josh to see if I could borrow his Jewish space laser to clean out the area behind my shed. But here's the serious point. It is yet another canary in the coal mine. This is exactly the kind of craziness the Nazis said of Jews in the 1930s before the camps opened. Let me suggest this, that every one of us call up one of our Jewish friends today or tomorrow and tell them that we denounce this kind of hatred and that we see them. This should not go unchallenged or unsaid. If there is community, then one has to face the neighbor. One has to get to know the neighbor. One has to love the neighbor. That's what makes our text this morning so apt and so interesting from the prophet Jeremiah, his advice to exiles in Babylon, written to them, by the way, not to us. The Babylonians took the Jews from the southern kingdom in 587 BCE. The exiled Jews lived as second-class citizens in Babylon for 70 years. This letter to the exiles from Jeremiah dates from the beginning of this Babylonian exile. Many years later, Jewish theologians point to this text as a resource that the Jews use to guide them in what they call the diaspora, the dispersion of the Jews after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE into all the nations of the world. They turn to this scripture to discover some instruction, some meaning for their lives. They turn to Jeremiah, which is what we can do, particularly if you feel exiled from the world that you grew up in. Then Jeremiah may be speaking to you. Or if you find yourself in a situation in this life that you don't want to be in, but there's nothing you can do about it, then Jeremiah may be speaking to you. This is what Jeremiah has to say to us. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take spouses and have daughters and sons. Seek the welfare of the city where God has sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. The Jewish people have done that to a remarkable extent all around the world, even though they have been banned from countries wherever they have gone. They've established themselves as part of the community and contributed service and benevolence and social compassion in measures that are unequaled to any other group. And they have done it, at least in part, because they listened to Jeremiah, and they built houses and they planted gardens and they sought the welfare of the city in which they found themselves, and they prayed to the Lord on its behalf. This is serious stewardship. This is biblical stewardship. Biblical stewardship is not giving a portion of my resources to charity. Biblical stewardship is based on the command of God found in creation to have dominion. That means to go to work, to make your place a better place. Dominion is used in the New Testament parables of Jesus. It's what the king gives the servant when the king goes away. He gives the servant power and authority to do something in this world. He gives agency. And then he returns and asks, "What have you done with your stewardship? I expected you to use what was given to you to make this a better place." The revelation in Jeremiah is that stewardship is expected of you wherever you are. You can't say, "Well, we're just temporarily here." You can't say, "I'm just a snowbird. I'm just here for the winter. Our roots are someplace else." You can't say that. Nor can you say, "I'm new here and I'll just let these native Tar Heels take responsibility for the city." You can't say that. Nor can you say, "I feel like a stranger here. These people here surrounding me now are not my people, so I don't feel any responsibility." You can't say that. Nor can you say, "I am too old," or "I am too poor," or "I am too anything else." This comes to us with divine authority. Build houses, plant vineyards, seek the welfare of the city in which you find yourself, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. There are other biblical mandates that have to do with dominion, with responsibility. They all have to do with the same thing. They all say, dig in, get to work. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, the writer of Proverbs says. In fact, what our Bible is really interested in is, what are you going to do with your life? You will have to search hard to find commandments in the Bible on what to believe. But you cannot avoid commandments in the Bible on what you are supposed to do. Because according to biblical faith, we are here to dig in, to be a part of a community, and to invest in that community, to build homes, to plant gardens, to seek the welfare of the city. Lawrence Hayworth published a book entitled The Good City, in which he said there are two parts to a good city. The first is opportunity, and the second is community. You can't have a good city with only one of those. He said this is what's wrong with too many American cities, is that they have been used only for opportunity and they have neglected community. That's what we're talking about on Wednesday nights, studying and considering the common good. People have always come to the city for opportunity. From the beginning, they have come to make money. They feel as if they could live someplace else, they would, but they have come here because this is where they could find work. Cities are economic engines and they attract people for that reason, and that's all right. They attract rich and poor alike, people of all nationalities, all races, all come together in a city for economic reasons. For many Americans, that is all the city is good for. They don't feel any obligation to contribute to the welfare of the city. They take out of the city, but they don't put anything back into the city. Ann and I don't watch network television. Commercials turn our brains to putty. So now we're just catching up on the sitcom Community, which began in 2009. It's a good way to end our evenings, and it's much better than average. The 7 who are students at Glendale Community College are all unusual, and they form an unlikely community. In each episode, we're presented with a set of friends who are there for each other no matter what their flaws. Unlike some more of the more heartwarming comedies of that era like Parks and Rec or The Office, some characters from Community are far less redeemable, which makes their kinder moments towards each other all the more sweeter. Compare the show Community to that of Seinfeld, the defining sitcom of the 90s. The not-so-subtle message of Seinfeld was that the good life is going to be found only if you seek your own pleasure and don't think of anyone else. In fact, do you remember the last episode of Seinfeld? It parodied that message as if it were the signature on the whole series, saying, this is who we are. We are people that believe that the only good a city is for opportunity. Opportunity to find your own pleasure and your own wealth. Not only was Community not mentioned or illustrated in that series, it was studiously avoided. Any sort of commitment or obligation to anything or anyone beyond the self was impossible. It could not happen. The city existed for opportunity on Seinfeld. But cities become uninhabitable if they don't also create community, concern for one's neighbor, sacrifice of a portion of one's well-being for the common well-being, contributing to the welfare of all. What's amazing about this passage in Jeremiah is that the advice is given to exiles 2,700 years ago. He presents to them the formula for the good city: build houses and plant gardens. You could say this is the opportunity side, the economic side of the city. But the next phrase, seek the welfare of the city and pray to the Lord on its behalf, that's the community side. That's the stewardship side. Stewardship is seeking the welfare of the place in which you live. Stewardship is giving back something of what you have received. Friendship exists when somebody pays attention to you. Community exists when a city pays attention to all of its citizens and treats them as if they were a treasure. Jeremiah's counsel to us is build houses, plant gardens, seek the welfare of the city, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. On February 1st, 1960, 4 young African-American men entered the Woolworths, less than a mile from our church buildings. They sat down at the segregated lunch counter and they refused to leave after being denied service. Joseph McNeil, David Richmond, Ezel Blair Jr., and Franklin McCain, all students at NC State University, were inspired by Mahatma Gandhi and his teaching of using nonviolent protests as a way to achieve social and political progress. After purchasing a few items at Woolworths, the young men proceeded to the lunch counter with a receipt in hand. Instead of heading to the standing room only snack bar where they were normally relegated, they sat at the lunch counter designated whites only. After taking a seat, the young men politely waited for service. Someone called the police, but the segregation at the lunch counter was a social custom and not a law. The men were paying customers and they couldn't be arrested. Their actions took real courage. They changed our city, our state, our nation, and arguably our world. They were students not from here, but they sought the welfare of their city. Tomorrow we remember and honor them again. In the 17th century, there is a church built in the little village of Sheffershire, Stanfordshire, in England. There's a plaque in that church that reads like this: in the year 1653, when throughout the nation all things sacred were either demolished or profaned, Sir Robert Shirley founded this church, whose singular praise it is to have done the best things in the worst times. We are to dig in. We're to seek the welfare of the city. We are to do the best things always, even in the worst of times. Amen.